This is Support is Sexy, episode 464, with Sara Bay, co-founder of Bliss Prospecting. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And if you are a woman entrepreneur who's ready to get your story out there, you're tired of hiding in the shadows and being a best kept secret, I want to help you get your message out into the world by considering podcast guesting. Being on podcast is a great way to share your message, your expertise, your thought leadership, and to let people know what you're up to. Most important though, being of service and support to people. Now, if you haven't done this before, maybe you're a little rusty in the media space. No need to worry. I have a free guide for you on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest. Just go to girlonpodcastgift.com to download this free guide. Girlonpodcastgift.com. Learn how to be an unforgettable podcast guest for all the right reasons. Now, I'm so excited to have our guest with us today, Sara Bay, who is the co-founder of Bliss Prospecting. And Sara talks to us about what prospecting means, why it's important to your business. Her company, which she co-founded with her husband, focuses on small businesses. So she really gives insight on the ways that we can look at prospecting, how we can identify our ideal clients. Also, the gold is in the follow-up. You have to follow up. Don't be offended or take it personal, right? When someone doesn't get back to you after that first email. So we talk about the importance of follow-up in here, but also some tools that she and I use. Two different ones, some of the same ones in this episode to share with you so that you can think about ways that will make it easy for you to follow up, right? Besides not taking it personal, you always want to make it as efficient as possible for you to follow up with people. The gold is in the follow-up. Also, Sara gives some really great tips about LinkedIn. You know, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this on a podcast before. I'm sure I've mentioned it, but LinkedIn is very much a focus for me as a platform this year. I want to do more to utilize the platform, to share expertise, to connect with other women entrepreneurs. I haven't been doing it as consistently as I'd like to, so I'm going to do it now. And Sara really focuses on LinkedIn and email. That's where her company primarily focuses. So she gives us some great tips and insights there, how you can best leverage LinkedIn, everything from your content to your headlines to your summary. So you want to make sure you listen out for that. All right, so I know you're going to enjoy this episode full of great tips as always. So now, without further ado, Sara Bay. So Sara, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
I'm excited as well. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
I've always loved making money. When I was a child, my parents didn't give me an allowance, so I had to be really resourceful. I remember when I was 6 years old, my mom owned a nail salon at the time. And, at the age of 6, I thought I came up with like the most ingenious idea. At the time, she offered massage as a service. So I thought I could sell to her customers and tell them I would just do it for $1 less. And of course they laughed at me and the first approach didn't work. But I remember as a young child, I always looked for opportunities where I could provide value and also make money.
So when you said about doing their nails for $1 less, less than your mom?
Yeah. So
you're trying to undersell your mom, Sara?
I was. I didn't see I didn't see how it was unethical. I just thought, this is a free market space.
Right, exactly. And at 6 years old, you knew if I could do it $1 less, I could probably get more. That's adorable.
Exactly. I didn't even know what child labor laws was. I just thought it was a great opportunity to make money. My mom already covered the overhead. I could just flying under the radar.
And can swoop in there. So
Yeah.
did your mom or your parents encourage, obviously she was an entrepreneur, but did she encourage entrepreneurship in you, or did she want you to get the quote unquote good job?
My mom is pretty liberal. And the reason why she's pretty liberal and free-spirited is she grew up with a military father. So she's always wanted to raise her child to follow her dreams. So she basically encouraged me to do whatever I was excited about. And at the time, I was really excited about finding ways to make a little bit of allowance money. So I remember in the 7th grade, actually, there was this toy trend that was going on. There are these like little squishy yo-yos. And I bought one in Chinatown, New York, and I brought it to school. And I remember all the kids were asking me, like, where did I find it? If I could sell it to them. I knew this was like another business opportunity, and I didn't have any competition. So I ended up asking my mom to purchase a box for me wholesale. I gave her the cost, and then I figured out how much I would sell it and what the markup would be. I started selling them in school, and as the day went on, I realized I only had a few left. And at the time, eBay was getting popular, and I realized I could do like a bidding style. And I actually ended up selling the last few for definitely a lot more than I had anticipated. So my mom's always been extremely supportive of all my entrepreneurial endeavors. I think even if she knew I'd fail, she just let me try it out.
Now, was your school supportive of you selling those things at school? Did they know you were doing that?
They definitely did not know I was doing
Okay.
that.
I was going to say, because a lot of the women I talked to, it's like, yeah, I sold candy or like yo-yo or all these things. They're like, but then once my school found out, it became a whole other thing. That's great. Now, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in New York?
I did grow up in New York. So the first 13 years of my life, I grew up in Queens, which I was basically an inner city kid for the first 12, 13 years of my life. And then my parents moved to Westchester, which is a suburb right outside of New York, because she heard about the schooling there and she really wanted me to get access to that education. So two very different cultures, I'd have to say.
Mm-hmm. Now, would you say that obviously you were entrepreneurial as a child, but would you say though that being an entrepreneur was something that you always saw yourself becoming eventually?
I don't think so. I'm going to have to say no, because when I was 15, what ended up happening was my parents went through a bankruptcy with their brick and mortar businesses. And that actually really scared me away from doing anything entrepreneurial for a long time. It made me want to do the safe route. So when I was deciding my college major, I was thinking about what is the least risky thing that I could do. And at the time, I thought the corporate route would just be the safest approach. So I guess in adolescent, I was really, against entrepreneurship. Just because my experience with it, I didn't realize that there was more types of entrepreneurs than brick and mortar. So that was my experience.
Now, was this the nail salon or was this other types of businesses that ended up when they went through their bankruptcy?
This was another type of business. It was a deli business, and neither of them were very familiar with that industry, and they just thought it would be lucrative. Ended up not working out, which was a mistake. But honestly, I'm like really glad that I went through it, because it definitely hardened me as a child.
Did it show you, did they continue on with other businesses after that?
Yes. So my father runs a golf teaching business now. My mother doesn't run a business anymore, but just waiting on the right opportunity. I don't think either of them are really that jaded. I think it's part of the process.
Exactly. That's what I was going to ask you. Do you feel like it taught you, like you said, it hardened you in some ways or made you much more aware of what can happen in business? But I was wondering if it also helped you see through them that this is part of business. Sometimes this happens and you can either give up or decide to keep going.
Yeah, I agree. It basically made me realize just to be aware of the risks when I'm entering business. So right now I run a service-based business. So most of our costs are related to our employees. So there's not that much risk compared to like brick and mortar business where you don't have any experience in the industry. I would say that's pretty risky if you're spending a lot of money on equipment. So things like that, I just became very, very aware of.
So let's talk about your business now, Blissful Prospecting. What was the journey like once you decided to, well, what was the journey like to, I should say, decide to launch Blissful Prospecting as a business?
So as I mentioned before, I wanted to go the safe route. I basically was working in tech at the time, and I wasn't like super excited about what I was working on. I made pretty good money, and that was pretty much the only thing I was excited about. And my husband, Jason, who's now my business partner as well, kept mentioning the idea of starting a business. So he noticed that small businesses weren't really that great at prospecting. And I've always been really passionate about networking, and that uses a similar skill set. It's how I got into Nike with absolutely no experience. So he suggested starting a business together. And initially, I was really skeptical. Like my father raised me to be a very financially independent woman, and I just didn't want to give up my career or the bacon I was making. And my husband, Jason, pointed out that I was letting my ego and fear get in the way of starting a business. And I thought about like the worst case scenario, like what happens if I start this business a year from now and I decide I don't want to do it anymore? Worst case scenario, I can always go back to the corporate world. But if I don't pursue this opportunity, I definitely would regret it. And really glad I made the decision to make the jump.
Your husband telling you that, did that make you sort of perk up? Like, am I really? Is that what's going on? Or did that make you more defensive is the only word I can think of, but that's not the word I want to use, but that's the only word I can think of. Because sometimes that can go either way. It can heighten your awareness of and make you question, am I being afraid? Am I letting ego get in the way? Or it can make you, obviously it didn't make you more adamant about not doing it.
Well, he definitely knows me, and I'm a very skeptical person naturally. So he would just make little ideas like, we should start a business, and then build upon those little ideas. He kept adding to it. And, my husband works in sales by nature. So he's very, very good at selling. So
he plants the seed and then he just keeps watering it.
Exactly. So, questions he asks our prospects, like, what is preventing you or what's stopping you from like doing business with us? Like, so he would ask the same questions, treating me like a prospect, and it worked. We actually talked through some of the fears that I have. Like, we talked about like my parents' bankruptcy, like what the risks were, and talking all of that through is what helped me make the decision to become an entrepreneur.
So what year did you actually launch the business?
So we launched last year in November.
So how has the past few months, really not even a year yet, right? How has the past few months been for you? Do you love the experience, or what has it been like being an entrepreneur now?
I absolutely love it. I love the autonomy. I love the independence. And I love the fact that my work is directly tied to like the results that we're bringing in for our clients and our business. And we've been extremely fortunate enough where our bread and butter is finding clients. So that's the one challenge we're not experiencing, and we're growing really quickly. We're actually hiring 4 people next month. At least that's the plan. So
wow, in just a few months, that is fast.
Yeah, it's going pretty well.
You said your husband is in sales. Was he already an entrepreneur and he wanted you both to start a business together? Or I'm asking because I'm wondering how your clients came about so quickly, which is a great thing for anyone listening who needs some ideas about that.
He was doing freelance work before. He had like a client or two under a similar service that we're providing now. And he's like, I have to give the credit to my husband. He's a sales machine. He definitely can deliver on getting the clients. At the time, we didn't even have a website. So he was basically selling our services based on just how we've used it to work on ourselves. And, one thing we really try to show our clients is like, we're very, very results focused.
So what would you tell us about Blissful Prospecting? How does the company work, and what do you do for your clients who are mostly small businesses, right?
Yep. So we help service-based B2B businesses with their prospecting efforts. So we do everything up until the point of setting up the sales date. So once we set up the sales date, we hand it over our clients to actually close. So we typically help businesses that need a salesperson to sell their services or product. And when I mean product, not like a physical product, but it could be a software as a service. So that's what we do in a nutshell. I handle fulfillment and operations, and my husband, Jason, handles all of our sales. So we use the divide and conquer approach.
Right. So what does that look like then for a small business, for anyone listening who say wanted to reach out to you? What problem should they be having that you guys will solve for them? Is it being able to sell? Is it finding the customer? What should we understand, I should say, as women entrepreneurs about prospecting?
So if the two tips that I generally like to give is, the first thing is you really want to make sure you're looking for prospects who not only want, but can afford your product and service. This is so incredibly important because there are prospects out there who could want your service, but if your service or product isn't in their budget, it's not going to be a good fit. It's going to lead to a lot of wasted time and effort. The second tip is, we always say this to our customers, our clients: don't prospect to make a sale, prospect to start a conversation. I've noticed when you use the approach where you're just trying to start a conversation, you get to know your prospect, their challenges, their goals, instead of using a very aggressive, like pushy sales approach. I've just noticed it just doesn't work. I think of it sort of like dating online. Like if you're messaging someone and the first message you sent them was, "Hey, I'm really interested in you. Like, do you want to meet my parents?" You would think that's like pretty aggressive. And it's the same approach for prospecting, especially in the digital world. You want to make sure you're getting to know the person, establishing rapport, a relationship before you ask to set up that sales appointment.
So for the first one that you mentioned, I think both of them are important, but that first one, especially if you do find your client is looking at potential prospects who, as you say, might want their product but can't afford it, what adjustment do they make? Do they change their pricing or they change their prospect?
I guess it depends. The first thing that we do with every client that we onboard is we ask them to send over their existing clients. So what we do is we look at the existing clients. So we're looking at people who have benefited most from the products or service they're offering. We're looking for the people who have had the shortest sales cycle, the people who, when you had a sales call, they just bought into your service and understood the value you were providing like almost immediately. Think about the people who have done testimonials for you, have referred people to you. Basically, looking at the clients that you want to replicate. Like if you could copy this client, what you want to do is mirror that client. So you want to look at the
like your ideal
demographics.
client.
Exactly. So that's your ideal client profile. So what we use is we recommend using an account-based approach, which basically means account's just another way to say company. We want to make sure that the company or account is a right fit before figuring out who to talk to at that company. So after you found your existing clients, like what I'd look for are things like the employee count, the industry, the revenue, technologies, the geography. And once you've identified companies that are mirrors to your existing clients that you want to continue working with, then I would go down to the contact or prospect level. Those two words are synonymous. So thinking about like who's the decision maker, who would actually be using the product or service that you're offering. You would use the same approach. So looking back at your existing or past clients, thinking about who has been the decision maker who purchased your product or service, think about what title, function, seniority, maybe years they've been at that company or in that role, their department, and building the list from there.
Mm-hmm. What would you say are some mistakes, maybe 3 mistakes that we make as entrepreneurs when it comes to prospecting for our own businesses? So if we're not yet working with a company like yours, which will handle everything for us, what are some of the mistakes that we commonly make that you've seen people make?
I think one big mistake is that a lot of people are just not doing enough. So there's a statistic by Yesware where they studied 500,000 sales emails, and they found out that about 70% of salespeople give up after the first email. So what's interesting is that 33% of responses come from sending out messages like 5 to 8. So if you're sending less than that, you're basically missing out on 33% of the responses. And if you're sending out only 1 or 2 emails, you're missing out on 50 to 80% of the conversations you could be having.
So the gold, as they say, is in the follow-up.
Yes, definitely need to follow up. We typically send out 100 messages a week per client. That's the approach that we've used. So if you're looking for a starting point, that's where I would start from.
So 100 messages to 100 different prospects for
Correct.
your one client.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then how many times do you usually follow up? Is there an exact number of follow-up for each client before you give up?
It depends on if you're using LinkedIn or email, but basically we try to follow up 7 to 8 times. So in an email sequence, that emails that are being queued up to be sent out. I've just noticed people just don't start responding until around email 5 to 8, even from my own experience.
Yes, you're so right. Thank you. That is a great tip for everyone listening. Make sure you take note of that, because I use just for my outreach usually, well, I have someone work with me on it now, but when I was reaching out to guests for the podcast, it was emails everywhere, and you forget, did I send Sarah an email? Did I not? Did she follow up, etc.? Do I need to follow up again? When's the last time I sent it to her? So I started using this tool, Rebump. I don't know if you've heard of it. Rebump.cc, I think is the website. Anyway, it sets up an email sequence for me. So if I email you and then you don't respond in however many days, I said 3 days, it'll automatically send an email to you saying, hey, Sarah, just making sure that you got this. And it'll have the original email at the bottom. And then I could set another one for 4 days, another one for however many I want the sequence to be before I decide to stop. And just like you said, I have found in using this tool, and I've seen my responses definitely increase. It shows you. But after 4 or 5 people, usually the response is, thank you so much for following up. Oh, I didn't see it. Whatever the reason is, it's never just leave me alone, stop emailing me. It's usually that first one, or saw it and I meant to get back to you, whatever people say, but they do eventually, even for me, even if it's a no, or I can, or let's, change things, I just want to hear back. So for everyone listening, as you said, in your business, you do it, but for me personally also, using a tool like that, and there's others I'm sure out there, but the gold is in the follow-up.
Agreed. We use Boomerang, but I'm definitely going to look up this tool because I just love checking out new tools. So I'm ready to
check it out, Sarah. I'm telling you, it changed everything, especially when I was doing a lot of the outreach myself. Like I said, you intend to follow up with someone, but when I'm trying to keep track, I have to go in and search and see. And then the great thing about, and I'm not, obviously for everyone, I'm not getting any money off this, but the thing I love about Rebump is that once you do, like say after email 3, you respond, it'll stop the sequence. So it's not like I have to go in and then, make it stop sending emails. It can tell when you respond. So definitely, I use Boomerang too to usually email back myself. Like if I want to follow up with you about something else. Anyway, all these great tools out there, everyone. We'll make sure we link to them. Yeah, but definitely check it out. Excellent. So you mentioned earlier LinkedIn and emails, obviously. So what would you say are some ways that people are not leveraging LinkedIn to promote their businesses in ways that they could be?
One thing I've noticed people don't typically do is they don't take advantage of the fact that they have LinkedIn as a platform. So one thing I'd recommend is writing content. You can use LinkedIn to speak to your prospects, since your prospects are likely going to be on LinkedIn. And by providing content, you can add value. So what I'd recommend doing is think about the questions that prospects typically ask, the common pain points or challenges, the low-hanging fruit that you could answer in a LinkedIn post, and share that on your LinkedIn. Because what that does is it shows that you're adding value to the prospect. And if they take that tip and it works for them and they need your services, they'll look to you if they end up needing your services. So we've noticed that works for us really well. That's how we've been getting a lot of inbound.
So you've been writing articles, for example, on LinkedIn, your company, not for your clients, but for your company, and that helps people see the kind of work that you do and then reach out to you.
Yes. My husband and I both post content regularly on LinkedIn. Since I'm not in a sales function, my goal is to connect with other female entrepreneurs. So I try to write content that I think would appeal to female entrepreneurs. Basically, what you can also do is you can use that same content in your messaging sequence as well. It's a way to provide values. We love recycling content. Instead of having to reinvent the wheel, you can just recycle the content. So if you have a newsletter, you can use that same content that you're sharing in your newsletter in a LinkedIn post. And then you can link back to that post when you're sending out a messaging or email sequence. And what that does is it provides value to the prospect and it gets prospects to come check out your LinkedIn profile. And if you have your LinkedIn profile optimized for your prospects, so that means in your summary, you're speaking to the challenges and goals that your prospects experiencing, and you have a way that your prospects can get in contact with you. You have at least 3 or 4 recommendations on your profile. It's a great way to show that you know what you're talking about. Other people have said that you know what you're talking about, and it's an easy way for them to connect with you as well.
Excellent. And you gave me the link to your LinkedIn, so I'm going to use yours as an example for everyone listening to go check out Sarah's LinkedIn so we can see how to do that. I think especially the part, of course, creating the content, but also what people see on your LinkedIn once they get there. Do you have a picture? And tell me if you agree, but your picture, and as you mentioned, your summary, what does your summary say and all of that?
So incredibly important. If you don't have a picture, please include a picture. It shows that you're a person. When someone reaches out to me and they don't have a picture, I'm a little skeptical. Is this an actual person? I don't know
what it is. Yeah, it's just and it's a person there, but it's just something about seeing someone that makes you have some kind of connection.
Yes. And the other tip I recommend is making sure your headline speaks to what you can help your prospects with. So the formula that we use is I help and then insert prospect with product/service that you're offering.
Okay. So I help entrepreneurs, blah, 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 whatever
exactly.
that's. Okay.
Exactly.
Excellent. Now, do you recommend that the women listening, who obviously mostly women entrepreneurs, do they do this on their personal LinkedIn? So say me for my own name, or on you can now have a business, of course, LinkedIn, or both, have it kind of reflect each other?
I think they should reflect each other. Definitely leverage your personal LinkedIn. I've noticed a lot of people reach out to our company and want to work with us based on just the content that I post. And people like working with other people. So I would make that as personal as you can.
Mm-hmm. Now, how often do you post, you and your husband or co-founder, how often do you post content on your LinkedIn? Do you have a regular schedule?
We do. I post once a week. Typically, I post Tuesday through Thursday, and I post during the time that I know my prospects are active on LinkedIn. So typically, anywhere from like 8 to 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. are good. From like a study on HubSpot, it showed that most people are on Central or Eastern time. But if your prospects are all on the West Coast, like I would make sure to post during the time that they're going to be active on LinkedIn.
Do you know this from your analytics, the times that work best?
I just know this from looking up HubSpot and what they recommend.
Overall.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So what advice would you say just for your business overall is something that you wish you had when you first started your business?
I think it's really important to establish boundaries. I have a pretty addictive personality. So if I get like really excited about something, I tend to like become very obsessed with it. So when we were first starting this business, I didn't have like an off switch. So like 8 p.m. at night, I would still be on LinkedIn. And I realized after doing it for 3 or 4 weeks, I just felt very burnt out. If I had to redo this experience over, I would establish clear boundaries, which is something my husband and I do now. So after 5 p.m., we are not allowed to talk about work, do anything related to work. And it's really helped our business and also our marriage.
I was going to say, I would think your relationship too. And I know other couples who say the same thing, like you have to decide on a cutoff time. Not that you're not going to think about the business, things are going to come up in your mind, but otherwise it'll just go on forever.
Yep.
Yes. What would you say that your support network looks like now that you're growing your business, especially? What keeps you going, setting the boundaries, but who are the people around you that help support you?
I would have to say my number one support person is my husband, Jason. He's my best friend. He's my partner. If anyone understands the challenges I'm going through, it's him, and he's been extremely supportive. I'm also connecting with a lot of entrepreneurial minded or entrepreneurs. And that's been really great because we have similar challenges that we can talk through. And of course, my mom, because she knows exactly what it's like to go through the roller coaster of starting a business and running a business. So that's been pretty helpful as well.
How did you know when it was time to grow a team? Because you said you guys are going to be hiring about 4 people within the next couple of months, right?
Mm-hmm.
At what point, for those listening who might be thinking if they should bring people on or not, whether it's full-time or contractors, et cetera, when do you feel it's time to look at building your team?
So the question we asked ourselves is our capacity impacting our ability to take on more clients? And at the time it was, and that's why we made the decision to hire 2 people full time. And the second question we asked is like, can we actually afford this? So those are the 2 questions we asked. I think it's like a quote, you got to spend money to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that by taking on 4 more employees, that will allow us to grow our business that much more.
Are you still based in New York?
No, I'm actually based in Austin now.
Oh, Austin. Okay. Excellent. So altogether, you'll have 6 people all at your location, or you're working with remote employees also?
We're working with fully remote teams. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why this lifestyle really appealed to me was the fact that we could be anywhere in the world and run our business.
Mm-hmm.
So we intend to keep our team fully remote, but we're definitely engaged with each other on Slack, video conferencing tools. And even though we haven't actually physically met our team, we definitely feel like a family.
Do you plan to do anything eventually where you all do come together for, I was going to say offsite, it's not an offsite, it's almost like a retreat or something like that to meet each other down the line, especially as you grow?
Yes, that's something that's definitely on our roadmap. Our team is, I would have to say, like the most important thing in our business. Like our team is what allows us to grow our business, to fulfill our services. And we have a pretty awesome team. These are people that I'd love to like hang out with, like outside of work if they're closer.
Right.
So definitely want to take the time to actually meet in person and do that retreat.
What was key for you in finding the right people? Did you do it mostly through referral for any women listening who are thinking about, how do I find, especially that people are loving now the idea of a remote team, but what helped you find the right people?
We were really lucky where we got a great referral. And at first she was just hired on like freelance, doing a little bit of contract work here and there. What she ended up doing is she showcased her skills outside of like the design work that she was doing. And I realized this is someone that's like a superstar. When I see someone like that, like I want them to work with us. So we kept on talking and we realized she would be a great fit for our team, turned her full time. And what I've been doing is basically trying to give her as many resources as I can and giving her frameworks to like ask herself the questions. But it makes my job a lot easier when I have a really great team, and I'm very, very grateful I do.
What would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I would have to say that I learned that I have pretty good instincts. So I'm not sure if you can relate, but growing up, I felt like the world basically, I don't know if penalize is the right word. The world didn't reward me for taking risks or trusting my instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed running a business, when I have this weird gut feeling in the bottom of my stomach, like it prompts me to figure out what it is that's bothering me and address the issue really quickly. And working in the corporate world, I wasn't really able to really flex that skill as much. So that's something that I've learned about myself. That's pretty interesting.
So in closing, Sarah, if you think over your life and career, and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
One person. I'm going to have to say Michael Schmidt. He was someone that groomed me for the role at Nike. I met him basically trespassing a Nike campus and pretending I kind of worked there by wearing like Nike clothes. And he took a chance on me and groomed me for a role, an interview, which like I failed the first time, and he still kept believing in me. And he just took a chance on someone who had no experience in the industry and didn't really have that much to offer to him. So if I had to say something, I'd say thank you, Michael, for the guidance and help and mentorship and support you've provided. I definitely would not be where I am without your help.
Now that's awesome. Now you have to tell us, why were you trespassing on the Nike campus? Was this a plan to get a job there, or what was that circumstance?
It was a plan.
So what was your plan? You're like, I'm going to dress like I worked there and then float around and see what jobs are available?
I think I was inspired by that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks. I can't remember the name, but he basically dressed like a pilot and everyone thought he was a pilot.
Yes. Catch Me If You Can, I think.
Yes, that was the movie.
That was you on a Nike campus.
Exactly. So I didn't go to the full extent that Leonardo DiCaprio did and like actually go into the office building where they worked, but there was this like little cafe where all the employees gathered to like eat lunch. And then I would just go there trying to like meet and like network with people. At the time, I was very aggressive about trying to get a job there. So if I saw a black badge, which is like basically all the full-time employees wore those, it didn't matter. Even if it was at a restaurant, I would find some way to talk to them. But at the time, I found out they had this little cafe, and I think security is a lot tighter now, so I don't think you can get away with it.
Since they're a lot tighter.
Yeah, they're like, okay, one pass, can't
right, right, exactly.
And I went there and I saw Michael there, who I didn't know at the time would be my mentor. I just thought, why don't I ask like a harmless question, which is like, do you know when they're going to be serving food? So we started talking and he got pretty excited, and, as probably because he loves meeting like young people who are very hungry to work. He's like, okay, what's your last name? I'll send you an Outlook invite. And then I told him I actually don't work there, but I really wanted to, and I'd love to grab coffee. And the relationship basically sparked from there. He ended up finding a role for me and getting me an interview, which I, of course, choked because it was my first one. And I had like that dry heaving, dry throat thing that was going on. And even though I failed the first interview, he still believed in me. And when the opportunity came for another interview, I felt extremely prepared. I felt like, when you have someone who really believes in you and supports you, that you look up to, it makes such a huge world of difference. So I felt like I did pretty well in the interview, but just in case I needed a little bit of an extra like boost, I interviewed for a retail application position at the time, and I found out where the retail application was piloted in one of the Nike stores. So I got my friend to drive me there, and I interviewed the employees for like 3 or 4 hours. And then I emailed the manager like a list of improvements to the application. And then, of course, he sends me a response back, saying like, I'm glad you're really excited about this role, but please stop bothering the employees because they're there to serve the customers.
Oh my gosh. I love this. This is so good. There's so many here. I love it. Well, I don't even know where to start, Sarah. Just first of all, going to the campus, wearing the Nike things, talking, and finally saying, I don't actually work here, but here's what I want. He must really appreciate, either someone would be creeped out, or as Michael Schmidt did, he really appreciated it. But then the fact that you're just giving us examples of that, even though you're nervous, because you said you got very nervous in that first interview, but you keep coming back, and you clearly had this vision of being, where was this? Is this in, what city was it?
In Oregon.
I thought so.
Oregon.
Okay. But you clearly had this vision of where you wanted to be and was trying all different routes to get there. So I just love that.
Yeah, I knew I didn't have any experience in the tech world, but I knew like if I could just make myself stand out in some way, at the worst case scenario, they would reject me for taking too much of a risk. But Nike's a pretty risk forward company. So the manager at the time, I think, saw it as a positive.
So did you leave there and go into your business? Or you had jobs in between?
I had another job after that, but
Okay.
that was my first experience working in tech, and I met a lot of great people. If I had to list one more person, I would say the manager who took a chance on me, Evan
Mm-hmm.
Swanson, would be the second person, I think, because he took a chance on someone who had absolutely no experience in tech. So definitely would want to thank him.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. Just visualizing you. Everyone, you have to go to the website, see Sarah's picture, visualize her in Nike gear. I feel like I'm sure it wasn't this much, but I feel like you have on a hat and t-shirt and like everything just Nike'd out.
I think there's like this quote, like dress for the job you want. And I was like,
Right.
I want to be a Nike
I
employee.
know that's right. I loved it.
I even threw out like all the Adidas competitor like products because I was paranoid that it would like jinx me. So I just like,
You didn't even want it in your space.
I didn't even want to see it.
I love it. Oh my goodness. So now tell us how we can support you. Give everyone the website, where they should go to find you, your LinkedIn. Of course, we'll have links to everything, but just so they can hear it.
So definitely recommend checking out our newsletter. We send out a weekly newsletter that has really great tips for people who are running small businesses or entrepreneurs. So you can check that out at blissfulprospecting.com/newsletter. And I always love connecting with other entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs. So definitely recommend connecting with me on LinkedIn. That's linkedin.com/in/Sarah Park Bay.
Sarah Park Bay. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. This was fun. I love the Nike story, but I love the whole prospecting idea too, and giving us some things we might not think about, especially with that and with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a platform that I am going to focus on a lot more this year, especially creating content or repurposing content. So it was good to hear your insight there.
It was great being on. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
If I had to share one piece of advice, I'd say make sure that you're adding value to any relationship you're forming. So whether that's prospecting or networking, even if you're just getting started, there's some way you can add value. So one thing that we do, whether we're networking or prospecting, is we ask like, what are your challenges? What are the goals or projects that you're working on this year? And if you're not sure how to help, like the best way you can find out is ask, like, how can I help?
How can I help? Excellent. Sarah, thank you so much. Hold on just a second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sarah. To find out more about her, to find out more about Blissful Prospecting, make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com. Go to that search icon at the top and just type in Sara, Sara. Her show notes page will pop up with the links and the resources, her LinkedIn, and all the other ways to get in touch with her. Supportissexypodcast.com and just search Sara. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you. It wouldn't be the same without you, and it won't be the same if you don't connect with me on social media. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I always say Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, which is great, at Elaine Fluker, at SupportIsSexy. But since I mentioned in this episode and in the intro the importance of LinkedIn for me as a goal and a focus this year, let's make sure we're connected on LinkedIn. Now, if you reach out, tell me that you heard this on the Support is Sexy podcast, because I get tons of requests, which is wonderful. I don't necessarily get to see all of them. So if it's you and you're listening and you're in the community, tell me that you heard this on the podcast and you're reaching out to connect. I would love to hear from you. All right. So thank you again for being here. And until we chat next time, always remember, you deserve support. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.